Greetings! Welcome to the Week 14 Early Access Update for Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off, as always, with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So we've got for you this week the first in what's going to be a sort of linked set of a few updates as we're doing a full migration of the sort of bullet, ballistics, magazine, and ammunition systems, as well as eventually sort of materials and impact effects. So what we've got this week, let's go ahead and toss that over there, get a little closer, is a bunch of new ammunition types and all of our common calibers. Go ahead and pick one of these up. These are ammunition boxes that function kind of similarly to the match and the bang snap boxes, in that we can sort of grab in the open section of the box and pull a round right out of it. Most of our calibers have three types to play with: FMJ, also known as full metal jacket, JHP, jacketed hollow point, and tracer. Those nice little red tips there. Now, before I get into showing you these, something you should know: we've changed one thing about how magazines work. Before, you could essentially spawn lock a magazine in any state, full, empty, partially shot, and when you pulled a magazine back out of it, you got a fully loaded magazine. To support multiple ammunition types, I've had to change that. Basically, spawn locking a magazine will copy it in whatever state it's in now. So if I empty out this magazine, spawn lock it, and pull one out, I will get an empty magazine. What this allows you to do, though, is to load a magazine, spawn lock it, and get one in whatever loaded configuration you want. So we're going to do some tracers here. Not quite sure how well we'll see these indoors, or frankly put on the 60 FPS recording of the game here. Wonderful. If you want, you can also do things like, say, stagger loading them, putting a tracer, not a tracer, tracer, not a tracer, etc. Let's spawn lock that version. Wonderful. So those are the three sort of basic types that you'll see for most of the ammunition types. And in addition to that, for 7.62 and 5.56, our rifle cartridges, there are three other types that aren't fully functional yet, because other parts of the system need to be enabled for them to do things. But sort of for future-proofing it, there's going to be armor-penetrating, incendiary, and armor-piercing incendiary. The incendiaries are nice too because they have an effect similar to the tracer, but white instead of red. So, to see the next thing that was added this week, I'm going to go ahead and load up one of our G22 magazines here with alternating ammo types. Three kinds. That's enough. Go ahead and spawn lock that, and we're going to pull open our options panel. Remember, that's touchpad menu, ellipsis, gears, and we're going to go into a new options section that we've added here, gun options, and turn on draw bullet trails. Warning, this is an experimental feature. It has not been aggressively stress tested. So especially, just considering stuff I've had to deal with in the past, AMD GPUs might freak out with this a little bit. Who knows? It's a compute buffer thing. But we've turned that on. Grab our Glock here. Chamber around. Boom! Bullet trails, which, trust me, these are way cooler in stereo than they are in mono. which fade over a course about 5 seconds. You'll notice they are colored to match the type coloration that you see on their given ammo box. In fact, we're going to go ahead and jump over to one of the outdoor scenes just so that you can really see how the trails allow you to see the new ballistic system in action. Wonderful. Here we are over in our Arizona range. Let's grab ourselves our AKM here. See how our bullet trails look in a larger outdoor space. Now, we're not seeing a ton of bullet drop off with these, mainly because for performance reasons, I've limited the trail sort of max length at about 800 meters, which doesn't really give us a super perceptible curve. If I switch over, however, to a 45, which is a pretty slow round, there we go. We can really see the fall off happening, especially if we fire it upward. The new bullets are affected both by gravity and air drag, and I'll talk about more after the sort of in Vive recorded video here. We'll have some more features coming up pretty soon. So yeah, so I have stress tested these with 2 Mark 18s with drum magazines, and nothing went crazy, but just be careful with them. Remember, toggle, options, gun section. Wonderful. So hope you have fun with that. I know that I didn't have any new guns for you this week. It took a tremendous amount of time to implement the new ammunition system. Basically, I had to rewrite the whole thing to be able to support multiple round types in the mags. But it was worth it, and starting next week should have some be able to do some cooler stuff with it.
Yo! Now that I've shown you folks everything in action, I thought I would take some time to describe exactly what's going on under the hood, where the system sort of has come from in terms of my prior projects, and the roadmap for where it's going. So, as I mentioned a couple devlogs ago, I had been working on this prototype for a sort of FPS, RPG, roguelike kind of hybrid that had an incredibly detailed ballistic system. At the time, I was really interested in getting that deep with it, especially bullet penetration physics, because I was interested in simulating collateral damage. In the game prototype, you were playing a character that was sort of an insurgent-like character. You were sort of this sort of cyberpunk hacker, political revolutionary. And despite the fact that I was giving you firearms, I was really interested in making them realistically dangerous to both yourself and the surrounding environment. It's always been something that's frustrated me in so many, first and third person shooters, especially where you're playing ostensibly the good guy. The way in which the combat engagements that take place are oftentimes in urban settings or in populated contexts, and there's sort of no repercussion whatsoever the fact that you're just sort of spraying a gun around and likely hitting civilians inside their homes, or at least ruining their homes. So that's where the ballistic system I'm using sort of was an outgrowth from, was in trying to simulate just how dangerous bullets were and how deeply they can penetrate so many different sorts of soft materials in an environment. And so, so I've migrated that system over, and I've been tweaking it, more for the context and performance windows of H3. In terms of what a bullet is in this system, it has mass, it has dimensions, it has drag coefficients, which is the shape of the round, both for when it's sort of moving forward and a sort of abstracted average for when it's tumbling. Say if it ricochets off of something, the next time it hits something, it shouldn't necessarily penetrate as though it were still moving perfectly forward. So tumbling is in there, abstracted. Deformation is in there, abstracted. It's based on what material a bullet is made out of, and it basically alters the drag coefficients after impacts have happened. It simulates trajectory, obviously, for it. Gravity drop over distance, air drag, and communicates with a second system, which is in H3 now. It's been migrated over, but it hasn't really been activated yet because I need to tune so many things for it, which is a materials system. Similarly, this comes over from that prototype where every object in the scene that can be shot is made of a physical material, tagged in a certain way. Wood, concrete, it can support aggregates of it even. And each of these materials has a density, has a tensile yield strength, has fracture toughness, elasticity, and roughness. Roughness being sort of like, is the surface uneven, and is the interior of it non-homogeneous? Basically stuff that's relevant to altering bullet trajectories. So a very rough material might actually cause a round to spin more as it's going out because the friction on the side of the bullet is incredibly uneven. So eventually that's going to be activated in H3 as well. Where I'm going to start is probably making a fun little testing scene that's an interior that has a bunch of sample objects. It'll probably just be a lot of shatterable cubes and things that will, affect bullet trajectories differently and are different masses, different sorts of friction, etc. So I have some time to sort of play around them purely in sort of focused abstract like that, and it'll be fun for you folks to play with. And then once I'm happy with it, I will actually migrate it over to the actual scenes in the game, and then do another run of seeing if it's behaving how I want it to be. As for the way this then impacts the ammunition system, obviously you can, with what was added this week, we've got full metal jacket versus jacketed hollow point rounds. So obviously the full metal jacket rounds are going to penetrate significantly more, and the hollow points are going to expand, stop, and transfer their momentum onto given objects significantly more. And if you're shooting, say, pumpkins or watermelons, those are obviously going to explode way more likely. There's the tracers. I might add in some hybrid tracers. Right now, by default, all tracers are just full metal jacket rounds. I may mix and match a little more, so there's a little bit of variety. We'll see. It's super tedious to implement these new ammo types, because for each one we need an ammo box so that you can spawn them out, and they're visually different. So we'll see. Obviously, for the rifle cartridges, we have armor-penetrating versions and incendiary versions. The incendiary versions don't ignite things just yet. I didn't have time for that this week, but next week they will. So if you've dreamed about being able to set off a stick of dynamite with a bullet, give me one more week for that. Yeah, so let's see, what else? Oh yeah, and then go down the line, I want to, and it's really the whole reason this ammo system exists, is I want to do some of the cool exotic stuff. So like Dragon's Breath shotgun shells, which if you haven't seen them, go to YouTube right now and look them up. They're ridiculous and ridiculously dangerous, especially considering how dry everything is in the country this time of year. As well as like Frag 12 explosive shells. As well as filling out the ammo types for some of the rounds I didn't get to this week, like the 308 Winchester and the 7.62 Tokarev. Excellent. Oh, and then most importantly, which I also needed to get the ballistics and the material system working before I could even touch, is finally getting sensible impact effects. Many of you have commented, like, why are there sparks when I shoot the paper target in the indoor range? And that's because I didn't have a data structure set up, both for what kind of round you were firing and what you were hitting, to be able to spawn a sensible visual effect for each impact. So I'm going to be slowly working on that. It's going to be a ton of work because that's just making tons of particle effects so that you actually see like splinters of wood come up when you hit wood, etc. But that will eventually be in as well. And then also on the docket very soon, because we're officially hitting a number of different items that the current item spotter is way too cumbersome to use, is going to be a full redo of that setup. It's going to be much more sort of touchscreen oriented, where you can select something and choose to say spawn its specific ammunition with it, spawn magazines in different sorts of loading setups, and probably even be able to configure a sort of loading setup for a mag. Like say if you want 3 tracers at the end or a tracer every 3 rounds or something like that, you'll be able to load up a mag and then permanently save that configuration for yourself. Obviously that's a bunch of data serialization I need to figure out, so that probably won't be in next week, but sometime within the next month that should be in there, as really that's going to be the only enjoyable way to interact with the ammunition system long term, except for those of you who are true masochists and load every one of your mags yourself because you just enjoy the process. Well, that's it for now. Keep a watch out, by the way. I'm going to finally get an updated tutorial video out sometime this week. I realize now that the current tutorial is like, what is it, like almost 2 months out of date at this point, and a bunch of control stuff has changed. Also, for those of you who are still frustrated with the way that attachments work, I'm going to be doing a full redo of that system in terms of how they mount to a gun, and actually have some visual feedback for when you're doing that. So keep an eye out for that. Probably next 2 weeks. It's gotten to the point where it's irritating me, so it needs some improvement. So yeah. Hope you all have a wonderful time with the new ammo types and the bullet trajectories and such. And I'll see you next week. Peace.